You can also find important tools to help maintain your situational awareness, such as the Alert California wildfire cameras and the Caltrans road conditions cameras. We hope you'll take some time today to prepare so that your family can be Mendo ready. Thank you.
Check, check. Yep, okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to call to order this meeting of the Mendocino County Planning Commission of August 20th, 2006. May we do a roll call, please?
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes.
Commissioner Richards?
Yes.
Chair Pollen?
Present.
Commissioner Wiedemann is absent by prearrangement.
All right, thank you very much. Do we have a director's report? Oh, sorry, geez, I'm jumping right over this important thing that I'm supposed to talk about. We're going to talk about determination of legal notice. There were some questions around legal notice. Deputy County Counsel, do you want to speak to that first before we talk about whether there's proper legal notice?
Sure. Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski. Questions regarding 6A were raised about the adequacy of notice regarding the Mendocino USD project. Notice published in the newspaper was correct. It appears that notice mailed to adjacent property owners had the meeting date correct, but advised people to mail in comments by December 2024. The meeting date was correct in that notice, but the noticing date was clearly incorrect. Under Government Code Section 65010, an action is not to be held invalid for errors or irregularities, including in notices, unless a court finds that the error was prejudicial, the party complaining or appealing suffered substantial injury from that error, and a different result would have been probable had the error not occurred. Given that the correct hearing date was stated, and the date for the comments was a date long predating the hearing of the hearing, or even the date of the notice itself, any confusion on the matter is likely minor, and we do not believe would meet the threshold set by the Government Code. That being said, continuances for any number of reasons may be granted at the discretion of the Commission.
Thank you. Any questions or comments or indications from the Commission? Okay, great. Thank you, Deputy County Counsel. Do we have legal notice?
Legal notice has been provided on all items.
Great, thank you very much. All right. And thank you to the members of the public that pointed that out and for keeping us honest and on our toes. All right, agenda item number 3, Director's Report. Do we have a Director's Report?
Richard Angley, Interim Director of Planning and Building. I do not have a report for you guys today.
Okay, thank you very much. And since she's already departed and we can't say, I'd just like to say on behalf of the Commission, thank you very much to former Director Krog for all of her years of quality service. She'll be sadly missed, and I'm sure whoever fills that role in the long-term position will be great, but those are some big shoes to fill. All right, agenda item number 4, matters from the public. This is public expression. Members of the public are welcome to address the Planning Commission on items not listed on the agenda, but within the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission is prohibited by law from taking action on matters not on the agenda. Individuals wishing to address the Planning Commission under matters from the public may do so in person, via email, or Zoom. If any members of the public logged into the Zoom room wish to speak under public expression, please use the raise hand function to allow staff to add you to the meeting. Do we have any requests for telecomment under public expression?
No hands raised in Zoom.
Okay. Anyone in the room wishing to speak? All right. Well, then I will close this item number 4. Moving on to consent calendar, this would be approval of the Planning Commission minutes from August 6, 2026. Any comments on the consent calendar? All right. Any comments from the public on items on the consent calendar? All right. I'll invite a motion to approve.
I'll move to approve the consent calendar.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes.
Commissioner Richards?
Yes.
Chair Pollin?
Yes. All right, thank you. All right, agenda item number 6. This is 6A. This is case number UM_2025-0004. The owner and the applicant is the Mendocino Unified School District. This is a request for a coastal development use permit modification for the conversion of an existing test well into a supply well with installation of underground water and power lines and associated trenching. I'm going to open the public hearing. Have there been any correspondence or telephone calls received?
All items have been posted to the website.
All right, thank you very much. May we have staff presentation, please?
Certainly. Sorry about that. I'm Rob Fitzsimmons, the staff planner for the project. Thank you for the project introduction. All right, one moment. This is the third time this project has come to the Planning Commission in the last couple of years, but to recap, the site is located in the coastal zone about 1 mile east-southeast of Mendocino Town Center on the north side of Little Lake Road, east of its intersection with Gurley Lane, located at 44100 Little Lake Road. The parcel is zoned public facilities and has significant forest vegetation, including ephemeral streams and identified wetlands, and has been developed with water tanks, wells, and other water infrastructure connecting to other MUSD-owned parcels, including the nearby Mendocino Elementary, which is visible in the image on the right. In April 2024, the Planning Commission approved the project as originally conceived and described in the initial study. This included on-site water infrastructure improvements, including new water tanks and the installation of 10 new production wells, among other improvements. The approval was appealed to the Coastal Commission, and while that appeal was in progress, the applicants elected to apply for a modification to the permit through the county. That's the UM 2024-0008. This reduced the scope of the project. The number of new wells was reduced to 6, and they were now only proposed as test wells. The idea being that once they'd been installed, they could be tested and then could come back for a modification, again, of the permit to convert them into production wells, which is what is currently being proposed. Ultimately, only 2 test wells were drilled and only one of them proved viable. So currently, the modification before the Planning Commission today is the conversion of 1 test well to a production well and the requisite infrastructure. The shift from the April permit to the December permit hinged on providing the Planning Commission the ability to review the results of the well testing before authorizing conversion to a production well. Because of that, a condition was attached to the UM 2024-008, specifying that prior to the submittal of any subsequent application for conversion of any additional test wells to production wells, a hydrological study in compliance with the Mendocino County Coastal Groundwater Development Guidelines shall be completed by the applicant and approved by the Division of Environmental Health. The hydrological study was prepared and submitted in 2025. About 20 on-site and nearby off-site wells were monitored during the testing identified on screen. Hopefully they're visible. The hydro study has also been posted and is available for review. Again, only of the 2 wells tested, only 1 proved viable, and that's the one the applicants are seeking approval to convert to a production well. The study has not yet been reviewed has not yet received environmental health approval. Although it was submitted in December of last year and forwarded to environmental health in December of last year, that still hasn't happened. In March of this year, March 19th, 2026, environmental health submitted written comment saying that hydrological studies are reviewed by outside contractors, and it had not been reviewed at that point. My understanding is that at the time of submittal, the county did not have an active contract with an outside reviewer. My understanding is also that an outside reviewer has been identified, but currently the contract is working through the internal process to get approved, the internal county process to get approved. Because of this, and because it was submitted about 9 months ago at this point, staff do not recommend holding up the approval of UM 2025-0004, this permit, on this basis. The study was prepared by licensed geologists and concluded that the well performed adequately with minimal drawdown. The Planning Commission is also not bound by the wording of the previously issued permit. You're modifying the permit in this action. And staff recommend accepting the hydrological study and allowing the project to move forward. Originally, staff had proposed discarding the environmental health approval condition entirely, but the Coastal Commission staff commented last week in opposition to that. They do acknowledge the time constraints at play and recommend moving the review timeline to prior to permit issuance. That's on screen. Staff took this recommendation and tried to see if there was some additional flexibility there in terms of the exact order of operations, because there's a number of steps even once it's approved by the Planning Commission before issuance. So staff recommended condition 20 shown on screen, and this was also in a staff memo posted on Tuesday. That said, staff also received additional comment from the Coastal Commission staff yesterday. Even with the explanation given in the staff memo, they still want to see essentially the exact language they recommended. So the Planning Commission may want to consider modifying the recommended condition 20 to more directly mirror the Coastal Commission's recommended language. And for clarity, staff understands issuance to occur after Planning Commission approves, after the Board of Supervisor appeal period is closed, and after the Coastal Commission appeal period is closed, and any appeals arising from those windows. After all of those are resolved, then issuance occurs. So assuming this project is approved today, it is subject to a 10 working day appeal period to the Board of Supervisors. Once that is ended, assuming no one appeals it, it then is sent to the Coastal Commission by mail. And then once the Coastal Commission has received it, they will announce when their appeal period has opened. And then I believe that's another 10 days. And I will point out that the last two versions of this project were appealed to the Coastal Commission. And it's hard to give an estimate for how long an appeal will take at the Coastal Commission.
Central oversight process that needs to take place, and it does feel like we have said that in the past. So I'm curious, and I understand the delay, and I don't want to have this drag on infinitely, but I'm curious if those timelines are going to coincide.
Probably not. Knowing how the county works, sorry.
It's
Probably not.
unfortunately, I don't have a hard answer on either of those, exactly how long an appeal will take and exactly how long the A, contract approval will take, and B, once the contract has been approved, how long it will take the contractor to actually do the review.
But if we adopt this condition, then it still would not be able to, we wouldn't be able to do issuance until that review was complete. Is that,
Correct.
am I understanding that correctly?
So my understanding of the condition, both as staff recommended having it and also just with the revision shown on screen, is that essentially both of those timelines could run in parallel rather than one having to happen before the other. So prior to the permit being issued, it has to go through all of its appeal periods, and also the hydro study will have to be certified, is actually the preferred term by environmental health.
Okay.
But it doesn't, the Planning Commission could alternately require that the certification has to happen before we even approve it and send it out to open the appeal periods. And the way to do that would probably just be by continuing this hearing. But that would stack the two time periods rather than allowing them to run concurrently.
Okay, thank you.
And I would just add to that, that given that the Coastal Commission staff person in charge of this project has like provided not one, but 2 letters on this topic. My experience is that if we go against them, then they can appeal it themselves, irrespective of whether the public appeals it, and that would delay the process even more. I think that's something to think about.
I do also want to point out that I believe the Coastal Commission does have a staff hydrologist, so if they feel as part of their appeal process that essentially a second look, a peer review of the hydro study is needed, they don't necessarily need to rely on us doing that.
So I'm completely lost. And mind you, wasn't a part of the prior process, so I just want to clarify before we move forward. So what has happened, so if I'm understanding correctly, the hydrological study was provided, and it got caught up here with environmental health because they have not reviewed it. It's taken a year for them to identify the fact that they don't have a peer reviewer. And so now they were like, oh, well, we haven't been able to do it because we didn't have a peer reviewer. Now we're starting the process to find a third party that go through the process. So we're holding up the Mendocino County School District from moving forward with this because we're waiting for somebody to review, a third party reviewer. So you guys don't always necessarily have somebody in contract indefinitely. Is that what I'm hearing? It's per project?
I want to be careful about speaking for other departments.
Okay, I understand. Maybe this is a question for Nash, and whether now is a good time. And then I'm curious, as I believe one of you said, regarding the fact the Coastal Commission actually has a third-party reviewer, and they're the ones who are requiring this condition. Why would we not just have them as a third party? Have them do it. I mean, have their third-party consultant to expedite the process. Essentially, we get to the same place at the end. It's an objective third-party reviewer who can say whether it's adequate or not. Am I understanding that correctly?
They won't do it unless they do an appeal of the decision.
Okay.
And the appeal of a decision, there's kind of 2 ways an appeal of a decision can go. One is it's sort of like a friendly modification version, like the city says, well, we're going to stand by our guns and we're going to do our special condition. And then the Coastal Commission says, well, if you change that, we won't appeal it. Then we have another public hearing, we change it, and then they won't appeal it. The other way is they just plain appeal it. An appeal usually takes a year to go through their process.
Okay.
So by the time that year is done, assumedly environmental health will have gotten their geotech expert on, sorry, not geotech.
Yeah, no, understood.
Hydrologist on board to look at it. Yeah, you can't really use the Coastal Commission's resources unless they're doing the review of the project on an appeal. That's just the way it works.
I understand that. I'm just trying to understand, make sure that I understand that correctly. I mean, essentially, it gets us to the same place. They want to confirm that the information is right, but it's just not their process. Is that what I'm understanding?
It's not their obligation to use their staff time for a local
That's okay.
approval.
So I understand. So it's
So
a
when
matter.
when they're doing the approval, then they would use their staff time for that process. And if you're thinking about like, what's the end game here? The end game is to make sure that I'm sorry, I'm a planning commissioner. I may be talking out of turn here,
No, I
and we've
appreciate
totally
you're
derailed our
knowledgeable about
process.
this. I appreciate
but,
that.
But like the end game might be that you want a good third party review, and you want a timely process for that.
Understood.
And in order to do that good third-party review and timely process, probably the best approach is to use this version of Special Condition 20.
If I might just add one other thing, I think that the idea and the rationale and the reason why third-party review is a necessity is not to, impugn the accuracy or the integrity of this licensed geologist who provided the hydrological study, but since they are hired by an entity to
it's
do
an
it,
objective. We
it's-
do it all the time.
Exactly.
Every tree report we get, we have a third part, but we have them in contract. So that every time we get a tree report, we send it over to them. We said, will you review this and make sure that you agree with that the findings can be made and you agree with it. And so that allows it to be done in a timely manner. And sometimes they don't agree. And so because not all arborists have the same intent. Some of them are driven by what the applicant is doing, so I understand that. So, again, that's why I guess my thought is clearly if the Coastal Commission they're hired by them, they are going to be objective. And so for them to review it, I mean, objective in regards that I would assume that the Coastal Commission would hire somebody that they trusted and that was reputable and that they use all the time.
Well, it's probably somebody who's in-house, it
Oh,
sounds
see,
like.
that I didn't know. So we don't use an in-house. We have a third party
Sure.
that's there to look at it objectively. So again, I'm just learning all the nuances and trying to understand. So I
And I think
appreciate
also, and not to excuse or demean environmental health, they have a full workload and plate as well. But I think what we're trying to accomplish in this, if I understand it correctly, is if we can run the processes concurrently, we have a better chance of expediting this whole
Okay.
process.
Okay.
Since there is this appeal process and there's a lot of machinations that still have to go on anyway.
Sure,
If
I
that can happen at
understand
the
that.
same time.
Yeah.
As the objective third party. And also just in reviewing many of the comments from the constituents around this project, there is a strong desire and need for verification. Everyone there also feels confident
Sure,
about this.
absolutely. Okay, thank you. Thank
You're
you,
welcome.
everybody.
Hey, it's so fun learning.
Yeah.
All right, where are we? Back to the staff presentation. Yeah.
And just to clarify a couple points, the hydro study was part of the referral packet that went out to various agencies, including Environmental Health, also including the Coastal Commission. The Coastal Commission had not commented until last week on this project. So the Coastal Commission also requested that the county's action include the findings more specifically referencing the March 5th, 2026 technical memo, which addressed the biological impacts of the drawdown from the well, specifically saying that it won't pose a significant impact to on-site environmentally sensitive habitat areas or ASHAs. The revised resolution incorporates this language into finding 7. This was also discussed in the staff memo posted Tuesday.
I'm sorry, I'm just going to derail us again. Just real quick, since we're talking about our response to the Coastal Commission, and thank you so much for preparing that staff report. It was very good. As I was reading through it, I don't know, did you specifically reference the concerns of the North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board about impacts to stream flow in nearby creeks over the with long-term pumping as opposed to after a 72-hour period?
Yeah, so things got a little bit confusing because of how comments were submitted. So the Water Board and CDFW, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, submitted comments as part of the referral process directly to us. And when they submitted those comments back in, I believe, March or possibly earlier, they had CC'd the Coastal Commission on those comments. So county staff responded directly to CDFW and to the Water Board. In fact, this is when county staff went back to the applicant and requested that biological analysis. That's what they were requesting in their comments. That's where the March 2026, the March 5th, 2026 technical memo came from. That was submitted to county staff. County staff forwarded it to CDFW and to the Water Board, who had asked for it. And no further comments came in from either of those agencies. So county staff took that as assuming that that had addressed their concerns. Then when Coastal Commission staff commented last week, they forwarded those older comments from CDFW and the Water Board because they had never been forwarded the technical memo because they'd never asked for it.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
I just to follow up on that. So do we have an answer as to whether what are the long-term, do we know what the long-term impacts are beyond the 72 hours and beyond? You know, again, doing it for a couple hours, that's
Sure.
different than doing it for 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years, the viability of being able to maintain that. Do we have an answer to that?
Yeah, so both the hydro study itself, which analyzed the aquifer impacts, the impacts on other wells, and the technical memo, which further evaluated the biological impacts of that drawdown. It doesn't just look at the immediate impacts of those 72 hours. There's also a projection analysis being made. So based on those
It's
70
forecasted as to what the potential impacts
exactly,
are
yeah.
going to be.
That's
Okay,
essentially the point of the study.
okay. But with that said, we're still waiting for a third-party review on that hydrological study to confirm whether that data that was provided seems reasonable and accurate.
Essentially, yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding.
Sure.
Thank you.
It's a little tricky because there isn't, the third-party reviewer's task isn't, it doesn't say why we need it. We didn't say that when we made the condition. So we can also just, the hydro study itself has the conclusions and we can all review those. My understanding is the third-party reviewer is essentially like double-checking the methodology, like a peer review.
Can I ask, wasn't there a shall in that? Shall be approved by environmental health? Is that something we can bypass if it says shall in the previous resolution? Am I,
Let me look at the specific wording.
yeah,
It does say shall, but again, the issue here is not what we do, it's what the Coastal Commission wants and the threat of an appeal by them if we don't do it the way they're asking for. Because
also a
she has now sent 2 letters demanding the same thing.
I've read them.
Yeah,
I've read them.
So, I mean, it's just a risk, that's all.
And for clarification, the condition was that the hydro study shall be submitted and approved by environmental health prior to application for a new permit to convert the test well. So the other staff recommended changes to the previously approved conditions are minor, but staff do want to highlight one more. The applicant, in discussion with the Department of Fish and Wildlife and the Water Quality Control Board, developed a stream restoration plan for a portion of the project on the a portion of the subject parcel near the existing maintenance building, west-northwest of the test well proposed for conversion. DFW has indicated they wish this work to move forward, completion of this work to move forward as a condition of this permit, but have indicated they don't need it to happen prior to the work the permit is approving. So to capture that, staff recommends, that condition is in the staff report and we can follow up to it. The issue associated with that is that technically that violates one of the mitigation measures of the original MND. So the original MND, the mitigated negative declaration, said that since this project, actually it said this project will not involve any groundwork whatsoever within 50 feet of an ESHA, an environmentally sensitive habitat area. Well, if you're doing stream bed restoration, you are doing earthwork in the immediate environs of the environmentally sensitive habitat area. So to address that issue, the specific wording of the mitigation, the lead agency, MUSD, prepared an addendum to the MND, modifying the mitigation measure as shown on screen, and finding that it would be more effective at mitigating potential significant impacts and would not in itself cause any potentially significant impact on the environment. Pursuant to California Code of Regulations, Title 14, Section 15074.1, county staff is in agreement with this determination. So again, MUSD is the lead agency on this project and has already adopted a mitigated negative declaration for this project. Mendocino County Planning Commission, as a responsible agency, also adopted the mitigated negative declaration with the previous approvals. Staff recommends adopting the earlier MND with the new addendum dated July 15th, 2026, that explains that the modified project's potential impacts are entirely captured within the earlier environmental review. Staff recommends the action on screen, conditionally approving the project and including revisions to findings 7 and the addition of condition 20 as discussed in the staff memo and in this presentation. That concludes staff's presentation and I'm available for questions.
Thank you very much. Questions from commission for staff that we haven't already harangued?
I don't, as of this moment.
I have questions for the applicant, but I thought the staff report was very well and thoroughly written, and I appreciate that.
Great. Yeah, thank you very much.
I second that. Well done.
Yeah. All right. Well then, do we have the applicant in? Come on down. Please introduce yourself for the record and speak into the microphone, even though you have to hunch over because you're so tall, so the people at home can hear you as well. Thank you.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay? Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
My name is Matt Kennedy. I am the project manager for this project and the agent for the applicant.
Great, thanks. Did you have anything you wanted to share outright or just answering questions?
I'm generally here to answer questions. It's good to see most of you again. Appreciate the staff report, which was very good. We are very near the end of this project, which has taken quite a substantial amount of time and effort to complete, but we see the light at the end of the tunnel, and this amendment to this coastal development permit is part of that wrapping up of this project, is converting this one test well to a production well. Ultimately, the purpose of that is to meet the Division of Drinking Water, the State Water Board Division of Drinking Water requirement for capacity, well capacity or source capacity for the school district based on their demands. So we're meeting that requirement through this test well, and we're excited to be wrapping up. Our funding ends. We have two funding sources for this project, two grants, one through the State Water Board and one through the Department of Water Resources. The Water Board grant requires us to be completed with construction of all the improvements funded by that grant, which is most of the project, by October 30th. So coming up very soon. And the Department of Water Resources grant ended officially last March, so we've been in limbo with that grant since. We have appealed to the state legislature for an extension to provide the time necessary to get through this process. We received word of that extension in July and have an amendment to our funding coming shortly, we hope, that will allow us to extend the project completion through the end of this year, December 31st. So we've bought ourselves a little bit of time with that funding agency. The test well and the stream restoration work are funded through that Department of Water Resources grant, which ends at the end of this year. So we are very anxious to complete those two elements of the project in time for them to qualify for funding reimbursement through that program. And appreciate your help in getting us there.
Thank you. Questions for the applicant?
So I, of course, have a couple because I love water. So it seems like a lot of the letters that are written in, again, express concern about the possibility that their wells may be impacted by water withdrawal. And when you did the 72-hour pump, can you tell me how much water you actually withdrew from the well?
Yes, it is stated in the hydrogeo study. The exact number, you might have to give me a few minutes to dig it up. I don't know if I've got it highlighted or not, but it was around 25,000 gallons, I want to say, somewhere around there.
So that's good, because we have a special condition already on this project that during the dry season, you're only allowed to pump 5,000 gallons per day. So that's a quarter of what you pumped in the 27-hour period when you saw no impact on neighboring wells. So that would lead me to believe that because we have this special condition already in the staff report, that effectively protects neighbors' wells from water drawdown in drought conditions. Do you see any error in my reasoning around this? Is there any other safeguard that we should consider with regard to neighbors' wells? And then I also know that we have a special condition that we added last time that requires Mendocino Coast, the water district, to provide neighbors with water if their wells should run dry, whether it's a consequence of this project or just the drought in general.
So was this condition 16 that you were referring
Yeah,
to.
16,
Yeah, 16, yeah. So a couple comments on that. So yes, we did not see any impacts to any of the neighboring wells during the 72-hour pump test. There were even very minor drawdowns within the wells that are on the property, and the stream we saw that's on the property, we saw no drawdown in the stream level during the pump testing. The condition, we have run into a problem with it. We found it to be difficult to implement in reality because the way it's worded effectively says the school district cannot operate their water system until October 15th. And so it's been a challenge on that one. I would ask the commission to maybe consider some alternative wording on that condition that might allow more flexibility in the school district's ability to actually use their water system for the purpose it was intended, which is to supply water to the school and its facilities, as well as the fire protection. And
So tell us a little bit more about that. How is it impacting their ability? Like, are they unable to fill their storage tank, or?
well, as worded, they can't fill their storage tank until
The rainy
October
season.
15th.
Right.
So that leaves them without any water.
But assumedly they can draw down off of that tank during the dry season. Isn't that the purpose of the tank?
It is, but it says the applicant shall only withdraw groundwater to initially fill and refill storage tanks from the aquifer during the rainy season. So that means that they're brand new tanks, they are unable to initially fill without violating that condition.
I got
and
it.
supply
So
water
the
to
tanks
this.
have been installed, but we haven't gotten to October 15th yet. That's the problem.
That's right. The tanks have started construction in October of last year and completed construction just last month.
So that's just a peculiarity of this sequence of construction. It's not necessarily something that would impact operations going into the future.
Yes, I think so. I think it's just the way the condition is worded, it could be interpreted that, they're not allowed to use the tank until October 15th. Yeah,
Got
and
it.
I think the way it was worded was maybe with an assumption that the tanks would be constructed at the beginning of the rainy season, so that then you had that winter to fill them,
Fill them.
and it didn't work
Out that way.
Yeah, because
Got
we
it.
started really at the end of summer and it continued through the rainy season and into the following summer, this summer.
So what you're asking for is for special condition 15 to maybe just strike to initially fill and just say filling with draw water to refill storage tanks from the aquifer. That would satisfy your operational issue.
For the most part, I think, the other challenge has been the limitation of 5,000 gallons per day. That, as I recall from our previous hearing, was based on MUSD's estimated average daily potable water use, which is, what they use for drinking and for flushing toilets and things like that. It does leave them without the ability to maintain their grounds, and until including their play fields. So they have, several play fields, and the landscaping for the entire school facilities, which must, essentially be fallowed until the recycled water project, which is also under construction at this time, is completed. And through that project, we are physically switching all of the school district's playfield and landscape irrigation to recycled water.
Yeah.
So
So what I'm struggling with is you've got a 500,000 gallon tank. And if you start filling it before the rainy season, you're going to be continuously pumping for weeks and weeks and weeks. And we haven't really tested the implications of that on any of the neighbor wells. So it is a unique situation. And the more I think about it, like, unless you can provide proof to me that it's not going to impact those neighbors, like, tough noogies. And the district has to wait until the 15th of October to start pumping water. That's the way life is sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, like, there's a cost to the neighborhood too that I don't feel like any of the studies that we've gotten so far have clearly demonstrated that that wouldn't have an impact. Because that's a lot of water to draw out of an aquifer in a very short time.
Sure, yeah, and historically, the school district has used significantly more without any impacts to neighboring wells.
But they can still do that, they just can't fill their tank. It doesn't say you can't use your water, it
Right,
just
but
says you
they-
can't fill your tank with
They
the
can't
water.
use water without putting water in the tank. The water doesn't go from the well directly into the system. It first goes through treatment, and then it goes into storage, and then from the storage tanks, it goes into the system. So,
Okay, so maybe we can, I'm sorry, we're having such a back and forth, but if anybody else wants to chime in, feel free. And we also still have to hear from the public, so maybe for 15, what we could do is allow an initial fill of less than the whole system. Like, maybe you can, whatever you need to run operationally, is it 20,000 gallons or something? So you have some residual water in there that you can be treating and pulling out of without, like, filling the whole tank up.
yeah, so the other challenge there is that we can't bring the tanks online. The Division of Drinking Water will not allow us to bring the tanks online until they've been tested and approved. And the testing and approval is a leak test of the tanks, which requires them to be full. And it also, the other one is disinfection of the tanks, which happens concurrently with the leak testing. And then bacteriological testing of the water and the piping associated with the tank to make sure it's clean and fit for
So
public.
the
So we can't-
prior tank you've taken out.
They had to be demolished before
Okay,
these
and
tanks
how
could be
long ago were
completed.
they demolished?
They were demolished last fall.
So basically, this condition has been true since last fall. So, like, why are we killing ourselves for a month and a half? I don't know. I'm not convinced changing the condition is that big of a deal.
We had temporary tanks up, and those have, so we, in order to make this work, we had to change some means and methods in how we built the project with the revised project. So we brought in temporary water storage tanks, through a change order with the contractor at less than half of the original storage of the school district. So we, have the fire
So
department
you've
on
been
notice.
using that.
And we've been using those
Okay.
to get by on. But in order to bring these tanks into service, we have to then, do what I just described, the
Yeah.
testing and filling, and then we've, yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm still not convinced to change special condition 15, given all that. I don't know where I'm going. If anybody else has other questions, I need to think about this for a minute.
Well, so I had two questions. One was, I think that the idea of supplying water to neighbors if wells are diminished is very admirable. But I guess I was also considering, did you consider any operational changes that if wells do diminish in the adjacent area, that you would change the pumping regime to account for that?
Yeah, actually, ordinarily, the school district is only pumping from one or two of their wells at a time. And that's been the case historically for, as long as I've been working with the district, so 10 years. There is a condition in here, it's number 20, which is directly out of a prior hydrological study, which is intended to provide insight into, any potential impacts from pumping of more than two of the wells. So we've got one new well that we're going to be bringing online, and then the fourth one, which is the subject of this hearing. So understanding how the pumping of all those wells together might draw down groundwater, affect aquatic resources on the property or neighboring wells. That is to be done shortly. Today is the beginning of the hydrologic testing period, and we have plans to begin that testing study in a couple of weeks. We were not able to complete it last year just due to the time, cost, and logistical constraints of just getting the one test well tested in accordance with the county requirements. So that took basically most of the testing period to complete. So we'll complete that one here shortly.
Okay.
And then that would provide the information we need for the operation of a well field in the long term.
Okay. And one other question that's raised by a constituent was around the purple pipe, the recycled water, reclaimed water. And would you be amenable to, and I imagine the answer is yes, but would you be amenable to saying that there's some sort of a condition that's placed in here that says once that is online, that this water from this well would not be utilized for irrigation of fields and landscaping?
You know, that was the whole purpose of bringing the recycled water project to fruition and getting that funding for the CSD is to, you know, allow the Mendocino Unified School District to use the recycled water instead of the groundwater for irrigating their landscaping and playfields. So, you know, we are physically disconnecting their potable connections to all their irrigation systems with the recycled water project and connecting up permanently recycled water services.
So like physically, in the future, it will be impossible to water those from anything other than.
That's correct,
water.
unless they were to, you know, dig up those services and change them back.
Okay.
But yeah, that's the whole purpose of that project. And those services are mostly in place now. The project obviously is still under construction and won't be ready until the spring of next year, and that's when it would go live and we'd actually begin the irrigation. But that's already in place. So whether another condition needs to be included, you know, to require that the school district doesn't ever use their well water, you know, I would leave it up to the commission as to whether they think that's appropriate or necessary, but it's already happening.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Train of thought, get back on the track, or yeah?
Well, you know, we're just kind of, I feel like at our last commission meeting on this project, we were very thoughtful about developing special conditions to protect the groundwater for neighboring residents. And to me, it's not clear that adding a new, I'm getting into commentary now, adding a new well necessarily contradicts any of those special conditions. Because the special conditions, you can rely on them whether you've got 1 well, 2 wells, 3 wells, or 15 wells. They still limit how much water can get pumped. So I guess I don't have any questions.
Okay.
That was my internal thinking, though.
Good.
I've now shared it with
Good
you.
to know what's going on inside that head of yours.
That's right.
Anything on this end of the dais? Questions for the applicant? Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right. We will now invite comments from the public. We will now hear public comment on this item. The commission will start with comments in the room and then hear from telecommenters that are connected virtually via Zoom. When you are called to speak, please state your name for the record. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person. Speakers are asked to please address their comments to the meeting chair and refrain from using profanity or engaging in conversation with members of the audience or staff. Are there any members in the room that wish to speak on this item? All right. Do we have people on Zoom who wish to speak?
Your first speaker will be M. O'Rourke.
Ms. O'Rourke, can you hear us?
Good morning. Good morning, commissioners, and thank you very much for your time and attention to this. And I very much appreciate the concerns of the commissioners in terms of our groundwater depletion in this area. I have been involved in groundwater issues with Mendocino for over 40 years. I wrote the original Groundwater Act and the enabling state legislation for that act. And I am very much concerned that the contractor here would be biased toward making sure the hydrological study is complementary to his project. And I want to remind the board that we go from holding tanks of 125,000 gallons that was sufficient for the school district for many, many years to over 615,000 gallons from our fragile aquifer here. So I'm asking the board to, and again, I'm grateful for the Coastal Commission and their comments, to make sure there is an outside hydrologist who reviews this report. It's got a lot of detailed information that's far greater than my knowledge of what is required in order to demonstrate conclusively that there'll be no impact on neighbors' wells. And I look at the condition 15, and I was at that meeting when you discussed it, and yes, it was important to you then. And then we had a speaker from environmental health at that meeting as well, who said the remedy would be, if you run out of water, for us to maybe deliver you water. We're not sure how or when, but deliver you water. That's not an adequate remedy. When you lose your water for your home, it is crises in your family. And just to say that you're going to deliver some water is not the same as being able to pump from the aquifer and use the same well that you've been using for as long as you lived on the property. So I'm asking you to make sure that we do have independent hydrologists look at this report, and that we get back to the staff to say, you know, maybe there's a problem or maybe not. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Ms. O'Rourke. And also, I just note, you did make a comment in one of your, maybe both of your letters that you submitted about some changes to pedestrian access along the Little Lake curve, and that's outside of the scope of what we're discussing here today, but I'm hopeful that it's duly noted in the planning department to take a look at that as well. All right, who do we have up next?
No other hands raised in Zoom.
Okay, wow. All right. No one else in the room at this point still wants to jump forward? All right. I will close the public comment on this. Do we have any final remarks from staff?
No final remarks.
Thank you. Any final remarks from the applicant? Nope. Okay. Do we have any additional questions? Commissioner Jones, or comments?
I guess I just have one comment, and that is, we have 2 resolutions we're trying to track, and maybe in the future, if you could do like track changes, we could see what happened from the last one that we approved and this one, because I'm like flipping between them and trying to figure out what switched. And I know it's all clear in your head, but not that clear in my head. So that's just a request for the future. So one of the things that so sure which resolution I'm looking at. So I'm looking at August 20th, 2026. And this resolution doesn't appear to have the changes that you had in your PowerPoint on it. So I just want to make sure that whatever resolution we end up adopting is the right one.
And I'm guessing you're going to advocate for we utilize the language that the Coastal Commission
exactly requested.
I
think that's the smartest approach in this case. And I also am looking at special condition 17 and not really liking the word can. Stored water can be supplied by MUSD to property owners whose wells have run dry within the area. I think we need to change that to shall. Because can is a very yeah, you can do it or you cannot do it. It's not really, you might as well not even have it in there if it says can.
Would you also want to have some time constraint placed on that as well?
Time constraint.
Well, so that it's a timely delivery, shall deliver water and...
yeah, I think that's understood.
I mean,
yeah, that's fine. Shall be delivered within 24 hours, maybe. And then I don't know the answer to this question. I know I have an on-site storage tank. I don't know that every neighbor there has a storage tank. So delivering water doesn't help you at all if you don't have a storage tank. And I'm not sure how to deal with that. I think the county for a while had a storage tank program. No, it was just you didn't have to get a coastal development permit if you were getting a storage tank. You still have to buy it yourself.
Well, there are other cities that have done that. Hillsburg did it to their property owners during the drought. They actually, you could request them, they had them in your front yard. So there is possibility to do that. But just to build on that, I don't know. I just think back to historically when we, and again, I'm not super familiar with the coast. I'm learning. Mm-hmm. But when we had droughts, Mendocino some of their businesses couldn't operate because they didn't, if I'm understanding this correctly. And so while, whom is going to provide them the water at this time of need? It's going to be a time of need that everybody needs it. So who's to say that that's even available? And again, I'm not trying to discourage it. Like you said, it was a great offer, but I don't know how realistic is that. I've never I never had to have water delivered during that time. And again, the storage of it, and, you know, is it even realistic that if everybody's looking for water at this, who prioritizes who gets it within 24 hours? Is that even realistic? I'm just trying, I don't know, I'm just throwing that out because I think about that, and I'm like, that wouldn't be super settling to me, that it's like, oh, well, they're going to provide that, and it's like, what if they can't provide it?
Well,
Then what?
I don't think we're talking about providing water for every potential user in the greater Mendocino County
No,
area.
I agree, but we don't know what those demands are. What is the demand for what is a safe and reasonable water demand for a household if you don't have water, depending upon, what if you have a family of 7? Or, you know what I'm saying? What is fair and reasonable? It just seems very subjective, and it's like, it's a great idea, but how realistic is it?
Well, I don't know, do you want to comment on that?
So we might ask Matt to come up again as well. I know during that big water emergency that the county actually paid to have water shipped from Ukiah over the hill, and it came to something like $2 million over the course of a year. Prior to that, water suppliers had been getting water from the city of Fort Bragg, but the city of Fort Bragg's water system got so low that they could no longer sell water to Mendocino. That has changed significantly. So Fort Bragg now has a very large reservoir that's been completed, and they're in the process of completing a much larger reservoir, a 300-acre-foot reservoir. And so what that water source does is, in a drought, when the rest of the county their wells might run dry, as long as they have a water storage tank, they can pay to have a water hauler bring water to them. Now, having a water hauler bring water to you is not cheap. I mean,
No,
it's
exactly.
easily $2,000 to fill up. I mean, it's expensive.
Yeah.
So it's a way of allowing people to live, but it's not a cheap way of allowing people to live. I don't think this project is defined or described to solve the town of Mendocino water issues.
I understand that.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
just using that, I'm just reflecting back as to what that looked like. But with that said, let's say that there's 15 houses that are within that are going to potentially need water. What does that look like? What does that look like? And I'm not saying that I'm just bringing this up for just putting it on the table.
It says in the special condition that only 40,000 gallons per day may be used for this purpose. So there is an upper limit for the water district in terms of providing water to those local residents for that exact reason.
Yeah.
40,000 gallons is a lot of water if you figure the average person uses 100 gallons a day.
Okay.
So
again, I'm
I
not a
think
water
we're good.
expert, so I just bring it up, and I just think, you know, what about funding? Who pays for this? Or what happens if we're in this, you know, emergency situation? That's an additional concern, and it may never happen. But again, that's what planners do. We think of the future, and we make sure that we have means of mitigating that. So, just a thought.
Mr. Gonzalez, would you like to speak to something that's been raised here?
If I may, through the chair, not exactly. I think, you know, I just want to make sure we don't get too off topic and try to solve the whole town's problems. I think, as Commissioner Jones has pointed out, you know, the project is not meant to solve beyond those boundaries that are being discussed, but mainly we need to stick to the issue at hand. You know, and unfortunately, we don't have environmental health here that can talk to a lot of these issues, but they're your water experts. And I really don't want to get into their area of expertise because I'm not a water expert. But I just want to say that we should stay on topic with the particular project. And again, reiterating Commissioner Jones's comments about not solving everybody's problems, but just staying with the project itself.
I wasn't intending to deviate. I was just using that as an example. I'm just saying that we don't have data as to show what the needs of each of those families are and if it's going to be available. I'm not suggesting that we need it, but but that's a reality. It's no different than we're making it, when you forecast a hydrological study, it's a forecast. We don't know for sure that that's what's going to be the unintended consequences at the end of the day. But at least we have some data to support that. Right now, we really don't know what the needs of the neighbors are, and we just need to make sure that we're applying something that's realistic, that's even attainable. If not, why do we even have that condition in there?
Right. And the hydrologic study is based on a given time in which it was performed.
Understood.
And that's where we really need to stick with that. As far as, you know, more data, yes, we could always use more data.
No, agreed. And with that said, you know, it seems like that this has happened more than once in regards to things like who should be addressing some of these questions is environmental health. Is it reasonable to ask somebody from environmental health to attend a meeting such as this so that we could ask them questions, because they are the expert in the field, and that would relieve questions of the Planning Commission and for the public, because we're just making estimates.
Yeah, and I would agree. They're the ones that should be present for these questions.
Is that something that we can request of you or staff to see
Yes.
if in situations where they are, you know, if there's a transportation thing, the best thing to do is to have somebody from
DOT.
transportation. So
Agree.
I'm just requesting that in the future, because I think it would eliminate a lot of questions, because we're going directly to the
And this is something I'll direct staff whenever a potential question regarding water, we have environmental health. If it's
Perfect.
a potential question regarding transportation or access, we have DOT present.
And I'm not
So-
minimizing, I know how much work everybody is doing, but again, we have to also be fair and reasonable to an applicant. They've been going through this process for a long time.
And I don't think they need to be here, like,
We can
if
have
they
them
could just
online.
be on Zoom, so they can keep
Perfect.
working
Yeah,
until we have
agreed.
a question.
Absolutely, I
Yeah.
agree, I
Yeah.
agree.
And I would just go back to 17 and clarify that the area that can be served, in other words, the area where the water district would have to provide water in a drought, is defined very clearly in Exhibit 1. So it's not everybody, and 40,000 gallons a day is enough to serve 400 individuals in a day. So I don't think there are 400 individuals that live in that area. So I think as the condition is written, it's constrained sufficiently to make sure that everybody's needs get met. And probably not all the wells would run dry. You might have just 2 or 3 that do in a bad drought.
And I would imagine that if you have a well, and I'm not a hydrological expert, but all the systems that I've ever seen, if you have a well, you have a storage tank that the well pumps into, and so there would be a receptacle on site for water to be delivered into.
Most people do. Some people pump straight from the well, but it's not not very smart, because if you have a power outage, you have no
Yeah.
water.
Right.
I pump straight from the well. Just
Yeah.
gonna throw that out there.
Wow.
And I've never used a well, so I don't understand any of this.
Okay. Well, are we okay with a modification of condition 17 that say water shall be supplied by MUSD within 24 hours of
Yeah.
notification? Deputy
Yes.
County Counsel?
Deputy County Counsel would like to see the applicant. Has any comments on that?
Sure. Applicant?
Thank you. Yeah, there has been some work done on this. Previously, it's been put on hold just to focus on getting the project constructed. But the grant that was obtained from the Department of Water Resources was specifically targeting adding storage really to address 2 purposes. One was to provide an emergency store of water for the community, which lacks storage for use during those declared drought periods. As well as the storage that the school district needs for the fire protection, because their previous storage just did not meet the code requirements. How that water is provided has been a topic of discussion. The school board had formed a ad hoc committee at one time to explore the process by which water would be provided. During the previous drought emergency, the school district had been approached by members of the community for water, during an emergency period that because their wells had gone dry. And the issue that they ran into at the time was that they were not able to obtain, I don't recall the details, but the water haulers had certain conditions that they required, and the school district was not willing to abide by those conditions, which I don't know again the details, but they were onerous in some way. So it created a kind of an issue in terms of how the school district might supply water. The changing of the wording from can to shall, I think is generally not a problem. It's just, what is the school district's responsibility in actually providing the water? Is it that they just provide a connection from the fire hydrant that's located near the tanks where a water hauler could fill up? how is that process to unfold? There is certainly a cost to the water because the school district is paying to pump it, to treat it, to store it. They've got assets to maintain. So the expectation of the ad hoc committee at the time was that there would be a cost because, and the municipalities that supply water also charge for it because they have a cost. So there were just, I think the point I'm making is there are some nuances and some logistical issues that would need to be worked through on exactly how the water is provided.
I guess that was kind of my point.
You're right, it was. You were-
Because so there's this idea that this condition is there, but you may not be able to meet it.
That's right, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And it
And
would-
again, I'm not trying to be a deal breaker, but I'm like, that's a reality. If you look at the logistics of how that all plays out, is this even feasible? Are you budgeted for it? Can they even get there? And so I really appreciate you clarifying that.
And as Commissioner Jones pointed out too, there is a limitation on what potentially could be provided. The intent of the condition, the original condition 18, I think maybe it's 19 now, was to maintain a minimum storage for fire protection because during these drought emergencies, it is also a period of heightened fire risk for these communities, and that was another key point of these. The storage volume is to provide that fire protection. It would also be contingent on what the wells can realistically, sustainably produce during a drought. So there are a few limitations still in terms of what the system could do during that type of scenario.
Okay, given that, maybe we can do water storage shall be supplied by MUSD as feasible to property owners. That way you have an out if it's not feasible. I mean, you have an issue here, right? Like, people feel like they have ownership of the water that's underneath their property, and they have relied on that water being there. You're adding a new user who's got a big straw, who's sucking a lot out,
Sure.
and the existing property owners are concerned about their rights. And so this special condition is trying to balance those.
Absolutely, and it's valid.
I don't know
Yeah.
that it's perfect, but I'm
It's-
not
yeah,
sure
no,
you could write
exactly.
a perfect one.
Understood.
And, you know, should the neighbors be required to pay for water that they currently get for free? I don't know the
I
answer
think
to
that's
that.
that's a bigger picture.
That's
I mean,
a bigger picture question.
But so I guess
Well,
what
they do
is
have
there?
a cost, it's electric. There is
Yeah,
a cost
and-
to withdraw it,
Yeah.
for sure, but it might not be as
Nearly
much
as
as
much. Yeah.
what MUSD might charge. So, yeah, it's a concern.
So is it, and again, I was looking at some other projects, and I wasn't able to find any in Mendocino County that it had implemented this, but there were some conditional use permits in Sonoma County that implemented, like, yearly reporting, and to see, kind of monitor to see how this goes. I mean, 6 months, and then one way they explained it was like a pilot program. I don't know, again, that it's kind of a checks and measures as to, so that we don't dive in and approve something and then we get into this position, and to provide a level of comfort to the neighbors. I mean, again, if you've lived there for 20, 50 years, and mind you, I love what the school's trying to do. I love that they're trying to restore it, and it's a wonderful idea, but we have to look at this as water resilience as well, and we have to not create a worse condition that was there, and we don't really know. And mind you, we have a hydrological study, and again, but some of it's forecasted. So when you implement programs that monitor it on a regular basis, and I don't know how that looks, because the suggestions or the existing projects that I looked at were not exactly this. It was a rock quarry, very different, in some of these other ones. But I'm just throwing this out here for discussion to see if maybe incorporating something like that is not too costly to the school district, but also provides a level of comfort. Would that provide an additional level of comfort to the neighbors that they're not just forgotten?
Yeah. I think it's a really interesting idea. I think monitoring could be useful if you had like years where there was significantly less rain than normal. I don't think monitoring during high rain years would be useful or meaningful. And then the question is, what do you do with that monitoring? So let's say, for example, that you have a year like 1977 where we had like 16 inches of rain. And you discover that actually the wells are resulting in significant drawdown of neighboring wells. What happens? And I think if you're writing a special condition, you need to have a what happens part of it, or otherwise it's,
Yeah, you have to have, you know, I don't want to say a consequence, but, you know, if this if this, then that. And I don't know what that looks like. I'm just throwing it out there because, you know, again, to add a condition because it's fluffy, and it's not to say it can't be implemented, but we don't know that it can be implemented. And so I don't even know, I'm just trying to be, again, fair and reasonable for not only the school district, but also for the neighbors.
Thank you. Deputy County Counsel, I noticed maybe you wanted to make some comment.
Deputy County Counsel Matthew Kudrowski, the condition always read can, even the initial draft several years ago. And that's one reason why it still read can when we adopted it as part of the resolution in 2024. The shall gives me some pause for thought in terms of requiring a dedication of property, essentially is what that comes down to. That is requiring that they shall give their water. And I think the issue is if we're going to try and make that requirement, I definitely would want buy-in from the school district without any kind of analysis of the impact of what we're requiring them to do, of requiring them to dedicate the district's water, that's what it is, for a particular purpose in terms of giving it to other people or charging them or things like that. I like reporting. We could always say, you know, we can say what they have to be, what data to collect, and in 5 years present that back to the county for a check-in. No matter what, we can't say demand a dry year in there in particular, but we can ask for the collection of data. We'd have to define what that is, so we know what we're asking them to do. But that's my initial comment on can versus shall. It's giving me some pause for thought.
I guess my thought on that one is that as it's currently drafted, it's a somewhat optional condition, a not mandated condition that in these situations. And again, I think what we're trying to address here is the immediate impact to adjacent property owners that are inside of this emergency water service area, which is a fairly constrained number of properties. And I know that if I were a landowner inside of that and my well went dry and it had not gone dry before, and it seemed to be, there's a strong correlation at least between the new pumping and the well going dry, that would be a significant impact to the use of that real property. And it doesn't feel overly onerous, in my opinion, to mandate that the school district would provide water for that. And again, I don't think we're not asking this. We wouldn't be asking the school district to provide it, you know, on an ongoing, perpetual basis. It would be for a constrained period of time while that well was not functioning. And again, hopefully, we never have to cross that bridge. But I feel more, in favor of a shall.
Yeah, and the reality is that's a condition of approval. And if at the time they can't meet that condition of approval, they could potentially get get the permit revoked. And so I'm not suggesting that we should do that, but I'm just saying that gives us a means of potentially bringing it, if this becomes an issue, then we could bring it back and say, hey, this isn't working. You know, these were the conditions of approval that we agreed to, and we did this as a level of comfort to the neighbors, and you weren't able to follow through. So now we either have to figure out a way to how it can happen, and you need to provide that data, or you use a use permit. I mean, correct? I mean, there is the potential to do that.
Correct. We could,
I'm not suggesting we should.
This would be a difficult revocation, is my guess, politically speaking, to revoke the use of the water system for the school. But the can versus shall debate, the size and scope of the impact, obviously, no one's discussed that in terms of a shall. So the concern on my end is just notifying the commission. That's the thing I get to think about, which is if we were requiring someone to dedicate their property, what kind of if they think okay, or if they like shall as feasible. Because I think your Commissioner Johnson's bringing up concerns on how this is defined, the logistics of making this happen. That's probably a little easier to swallow. But a pure shall, typically when you're doing some kind of required dedication of property, we have to have an analysis on that. So here that's why I'm asking for some buy-in, hopefully from the district.
Right, and I guess just to go to your comment, Commissioner Jones, of if we put a condition in there, if feasible. Then the question is who determines feasibility, and would be a challenging one. I mean, we could also maybe qualify it with like a as deemed reasonable by MUSD or?
I also feel like we're noodling this a little
Yeah,
too much,
okay.
honestly. I mean, I think I'm hopeful that the Mendocino County School District water system would want to be a good neighbor to neighbors if it pumped their wells dry. And I think they would be in a little bit of political hot sauce if they didn't. So I'm okay leaving it with can. I think shall is a little bit better, but not a big deal. Can I ask Matt a question? Getting to your
Yeah, because I'm
comment.
like, what about a monitor? I mean, what about
Yeah,
the idea of,
so-
I think a monitoring a program is again.
more valuable.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I have a specific question, Matt. So at what point, when you're pumping water out and it's impacting other wells, at what point do you decide that that impact is significant? Like if their wells draw down by a foot or draw down by 50%, or what's the measure for you where you're like, oh, that's worrisome?
Well, I would default back to the coastal well development guideline for what the guideline defines as an impact to a neighboring well.
And what's that?
Oh boy, you're putting me
Sorry.
on the spot, Marie.
Sorry.
And we don't have the county health department here to answer the question. I do have a copy of the guideline here with me, and I know it's in here.
Well, we can just reference the guidelines then.
Yeah, I mean, it does define, a joint, let's see, I'm going to just read this. The recommended criteria for judging adverse water table drawdown or impact at adjoining wells, 10% of the existing drawdown under maximum day pumping rates or reduction of well yield to less than 90% of maximum day demand. So, and then there's some more, it's a long paragraph, but the guidelines define what an impact to a neighboring adjacent well is.
Okay.
And
What's the name of the guidelines?
it's the County of Mendocino Coastal Groundwater Development Guidelines, and it contains the requirements for the hydrogeologic study. And in the study, the language, which is more verbose than I just stated, is what is used to evaluate whether the hydrogeo study and the well would have a potential impact on a neighbor's well.
Now I'm going to ask you for another technical point, sorry.
Okay.
What would you consider a drought year in terms of rainfall?
A drought, well, the drought year, in terms of rainfall, I don't know. It is I think that's also defined, I mean, it's in a condition here as Water Code Section 13198A, or during a declared drought stage 3 as described in the Mendocino City Community Services District Water Shortage Contingency Plan. So those are the definitions of a drought that are tied to the conditions on this project currently. It's not necessarily tied to rainfall, but rainfall often can be a trigger for drought conditions.
Okay. So the reason I ask that is I'm trying to craft a special condition that will address this bigger issue that your water study doesn't really answer, which is, does this all float? Does this all still work in a really bad drought year? Like, that's the question that we want to have, that the commission, I think, is concerned about, because the neighbors are concerned about, and because many of us are on wells. We recognize it as a valid concern.
And one other thing that hasn't been brought up yet in this meeting, but we did discuss it during the previous hearings, is that the school district's demands don't change with this project.
Right.
Their demands are still the same as they always have been.
Right.
So they're not going to be continuously pumping the aquifer dry, which I've seen comments from the public, and
And I agree with that, but I also think that there's going to be a political pressure
Sure.
on the school district if we're in a stage 3 emergency for them to start selling water to Mendocino,
Right.
the town of Mendocino. And is the school district going to at that point say, no, we're not going to sell this water to you? Highly unlikely. So I think the reality is that in a drought year, there's going to be more demand for that water than there is in a normal year.
Right, and it would be that condition when you would be pumping at a higher rate than normal.
Right,
Right.
exactly. And that's the condition in which you have less water.
Yeah.
Always the case, right? You always pump more when there's less.
Yeah.
So what I'm thinking is that the water district should complete a 72-hour pump test with the water that they're pumping for their test going into their big storage tank, so we're not talking about wasting this water, during the first drought year as defined by the Mendocino County Guidelines, coastal, whatever, whatever that study is you just said, and that if the wells the neighboring wells are impacted for that study, then what? Commission. Because now we've reached a point where in this condition, the neighbor wells are being impacted by this well. Now what? Now what is the commission feel comfortable doing? Would we say, now you have to provide water to your neighbors? Or do we say, now you can't pump anymore, but now Mendocino, the town of Mendocino is saying, we need water. So it's kind of like,
I think it's too late at that point.
it's a really thorny issue.
Yeah. What about, because I did write a couple ideas, you know, and again, you can speak to this more because I don't know what the costs incurred for this is, but, you know, doing this as a first year reporting, because I think that's good. We don't know what long-term, 72 hours, come on. That doesn't, to me, it's accumulation, it's doing it all the time to see what that impact is. And then, so that you require regular water level monitoring with quarterly reports during the first 12 months, include seasonal measurements sufficient to capture wet and dry season conditions. And again, that doesn't get us to where the dry season is. But I think we should, and then we should continue that for 5 years. And again, you can speak to what the cost potentially, if you have an idea. We're trying to just we want to find a way forward for you. We want to be fair and reasonable to everybody. We're a little stumped. We don't know how to get there.
Yeah. Well, I would offer, I think that doing this pump testing during the next declared drought emergency could be a challenge because none of us know when that's going to occur.
Yeah.
There is the condition 20, which is that the well field will be pump tested during the hydrologic testing period. And I would offer that that is a good opportunity for us to understand what the actual impact could be from all the wells pumping together. That was the intent of that recommendation from the hydrogeo study that was prepared 4 or 5 years ago, was to understand how the aquifer and the on-site, the stream on-site, the neighboring wells would be, impacted or not during that prolonged, and it would be a 72-hour pump test during that pump test period. So,
and again, that just doesn't seem like that 72 hours doesn't show the potential long-term effects. Yes, we have forecasting. Right. But that's, again, that's an assumption.
It does give, actually, so from that pump test result, and that's why we did it and it's why the requirement is in the guidelines, and it's why we did it for well 7, is from the data that's collected, you can make very, I think, reasonably accurate predictions of, what the drawdown is in the neighboring areas. There is some idealization and some quite a bit of conservatism built into those projections because they rely on empirical equations and methodologies that assume uniform conditions in the aquifer, uniform soil strata, things, that the aquifer is behaving equally in all directions, things like that. And that's about, the best that we can do these days with the science of it. But I think between those projections, which are summarized in this study for the test well 7, do provide a reasonable prediction of what could be expected. And we did do that with we used the results of well 7, projected those to all of the wells on the site. So we looked at all 4 in a theoretical scenario, and based on that, none of the neighboring wells were impacted. And this was pumping at a rate that's equal to MUSD's maximum day demand. So this is that demand that the Division of Drinking Water wants us to have well capacity to meet. So we weren't pumping all the wells at that. We want to do that, and that's what we have condition 20 in the...
No, I understand.
But I'm not seeing special condition 20 being that. So maybe you're looking at a different resolution?
I'm looking at the original, I'm looking at it's in the original...
so if we adopt this new resolution, that special condition is lost. So maybe this is an argument for adding it back in?
Yeah, if it's not in there, then maybe it is. Like I said, we've always intended to meet that condition, and this was the year that we do that, before the project is completed and during the current hydrologic testing period. So regardless of whether it makes it into this modified permit or not, we intend to follow through on that study.
Can I ask, just in follow-up, so the testing that's about ready to start, the report is going to be prepared. Is it going to catch up with the first study that is currently under review by environmental health, or
well,
how's that working?
Sure. So we're going to do the pump testing and collect the data and review it. The condition did not require us to perform a hydrogeological study necessarily, but we were going to use the data to make the projections and such. So, and see, the intent of 20 and the original recommendation that was in the hydrogeo study is to understand how the aquifer performs and to develop a well pumping regime, a management regime for all the wells. Right.
Is that, so that is going to catch up with the original? Is that going to be submitted to environmental health, or is it not required to? Somebody help me out here.
At this point, there's no requirement.
Not requirement? Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
If I may, through the chair,
Please.
we're venturing into areas that are more EH, and we'd really like to have them present. We cannot reach the director at this time. Just for consideration, possibly continuing the item to the next hearing and have EH present so they can answer these questions.
Is that going to derail use substantially?
It depends on when the next hearing is.
2 weeks, potentially.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. One item I would ask for action on is the stream restoration. We have all permits in hand. We're just about done with our negotiations with our contractor for the pricing. We would like to get that going. We have a very narrow window.
We need to do it before the rain starts.
Is there a path forward to allow that, to continue a portion of it? But I know that gets tricky, but
If I may, through the chair.
You may.
That component has technically already been approved under the previous permit via a memo of substantial conformance. So the coastal permit administrator reviewed it and found it to meet the currently active permit. So that's fine to move forward. The reason why it's coming up here is because specifically CDFW wanted to make sure that its completion was tied to this modification as a condition. So staff do not see a continuance here as inhibiting that work from
that
continuing
portion, because it's not going to, because it's going to be reviewed at the completion of the entire project, right? I mean, so this is just like a little piece of it that would be, if I'm understanding what you're saying as to what the condition was of, I guess not Fish and Wildlife anymore, but is it?
I mean,
I'm not entirely I'm sorry.
no, please.
I'm not entirely sure what you mean
What
by
I said? I get
well,
that.
by reviewing it again.
Well, will you restate what that condition is? I guess maybe I'm unclear.
Sure, so this is referring to condition 14 in the most recently posted resolution. And just to jump back a bit, this recently posted resolution does skip one of the items that I raised in the presentation, specifically the rewording that Coastal Commission requested. That's because they requested it after that resolution was posted. But condition 14 says, the unnamed tributary identified in the submitted drainage channel reroute plan shall be restored as shown in that plan. This work must occur within 2 years of the test well's conversion to a production well.
So what was the other one that was approved, though? You said that in the prior one that it was already approved, and if
So the act of doing the wetland restoration has been approved. They're allowed to move forward with that.
Okay.
The reason why it's being brought up here is because completion of that is being tied. When a permit is issued to cover several different aspects of development, the applicant isn't necessarily compelled to complete every component. So they have the approval to continue working toward it. They also are not currently bound by anything at the county level saying they must complete it. So that's where CDFW asked that that be included here.
So in other words, you can get a coastal development permit and not exercise it. So they have a coastal development permit to do this creek restoration. They could decide, we don't really want to do it. And CDFW is saying, no, thou must do it. So that's why the special condition 14 has been added. So the fact that if we don't make a motion on this, they can proceed with that
Yeah,
project.
because let's say they decided to, let's say you didn't want to move forward with the permit, then you could go ahead and do what you were doing. So I don't know why, I understand that per this is tied to this particular permit. So it seems like if it was already approved, they can complete that, if they can do that
Yeah.
other portion of it. And so that's, and I would speak to you, council, as to if I'm understanding that correctly.
So Deputy County Counsel Matthew Godrowski, I believe the applicant was asking if they, for some kind of action today to bless that work. If I'm right, the CPA, Coastal Permit Administrator, already did that. I think there's a memo we can share on the screen if need be for a memo of that substantially conformed to that prior work if desired. So there's no need for a partial action today for them to go forward with it. The concern is, as Commissioner Jones said, there being any kind of future requirement to complete it, and we can always bring that back as part, continue that and handle that as part of the action on this project.
So the
At a
answer to
different
your
point in
question
time.
is yes, you can move forward regardless of this getting continued to.
You have our blessing.
Yes.
Thank you, thank you.
So,
Yeah,
so
no,
I have a different question.
Sure.
And that is, I feel like this issue of what happens in a drought, environmental health is not going to have the answer to that in 2 weeks. So I'm not sure, I feel like that's a question that's only going to be answered when we get to a drought.
But I
Find out
also
what
feel like in
happens.
regards to implementing a monitoring program, that they could speak to that and see what's viable and what the expectations are, because essentially it would get reviewed by them, no different than the hydrological study does. So I think that they could speak to some of that and give us a realistic idea as to, and again, at least we've done our due diligence in regards to addressing the concerns of the neighbors and
Got it.
the project as a whole. And it's 2 weeks. I mean,
Yeah, it's
I'm,
not
it's
that long.
not, they're already, we're looking at potentially an appeal that could take you another year. And so another 2 weeks seems like we've done our due diligence. I mean, not to be a bummer, but that's the reality, that it seems like I would feel better in my position, having known that we exhausted all of our resources.
Yeah, and it might also help people in the neighborhood and also the coastal commission feel more
exactly.
comfortable.
And if I may, through the chair, we could also take the conditions of approval that we were working on, the 72-hour pump test during the first drought year. There were some variables in there, the then what. I think EH could supply those then
Okay.
what.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then also you could fix Special Condition 20 to match what the coastal commission staff wants when you bring it back.
And what about the additional, what he spoke to in the prior resolution?
There was a different Special
Ye-
Condition 20.
Yeah, so to that, again, because I wasn't here for that, and so I think that it would be helpful. I think it gives us all an opportunity to kind of look at that a little bit closer, and to see if maybe it was a great idea, thank you.
Well, it sounds like you all are already committed
Doing
to doing that
Yeah, but
action, but
I mean, there's a level of comfort in knowing that it's actually here, and it's like, and it,
I mean, I think until there is an amended coastal development permit, we're still operating under
The old one.
current
Okay.
permit, which this is still an active condition, which we are going to be diligently following through with. So
Maybe
yes.
you'll even have answers in 2 weeks.
Well, that's what we're hoping.
Yeah,
You
so
know,
that could be good too.
Yeah. The only other one I would like to just bring up one last time is the current condition 16 about the filling of the tanks, and if there could be some clarity brought to us on that. Again, just noting that we cannot use the tanks based on the wording there, and we can't start using them until they're full, and that the filling of them is necessary. It's a requirement to test them and certify them and bring them into service, and that's done through the Division of Drinking Water.
would environmental health be able to address some of the, what the significance of, again, I don't know what the impacts of that are going to be. Could environmental health speak to that, whether they feel that seems like it might be more of their purview than it would be ours? Whether, if this is needed, or what would be the impacts if they got a head start?
I mean, if they did 25,000 gallons in basically 3 days, and they're looking to fill 650,000 gallons, so that'd be full pumping for 650 divided by 25.
How much do you need to do the testing?
That's a lot of water.
So what's the bare minimum that you need to do the testing?
He
So-
needs it full.
The
Oh,
tanks
you need it full.
Right, that's
Ah.
how they're leak tested. The only
Got
way to
it.
tell if the leaks are addressed is to fill the tank.
Yeah,
to-
so that's 78 days straight
Yeah.
of 100% filling. That's a lot of water.
Without,
and
no, without the.
Without having any idea of what the impact
impacts
would
are
be
gonna
on the,
be. Can you
on the
Can you
neighbors.
bring water in? I mean, I know that sounds crazy, but I'm like, if you need to know if it leaks, you may
Very
be able to bring
expensive.
other water in from somewhere else.
no, it's way too expensive.
That's a lot of water
Okay.
trucks.
Okay, I'm not a water expert, so I'm just trying to find a path forward.
I mean, that's 78 days of full force water pumping. Like, can you look me in the eye and say that's not going to have any impact on any of their wells?
I-
You didn't look me in the eye.
Yeah, I do not believe it will have any impact on any of the wells.
Yeah, but you don't
Yeah.
believe, but we don't know. And I guess that's where it comes down to, is it's like,
Oh.
I don't know if you think.
I know. No, I mean, no one knows. I mean, we've got the hydrologic study that's been done that demonstrated that, at least according to the modeling that has been utilized so far by this unverified report, it will not have
Exactly.
an impact. But
Could you continue monitoring the neighboring wells while you fill the tanks? And if there is an impact, stop filling them?
We could do that. It would take some effort because we have to go back and reinstall all the instruments. There would be quite a bit of time and effort and cost involved in doing that. We are going to be reaching back out to the surrounding neighbors to request that we can put transducers back into their wells for this current condition
Right.
20 pump testing that we're planning. But yeah,
So then you could just leave those transducers in.
we can leave them
Right.
in because they can record for a long period of time.
Well, potentially you may be conditioned to provide monitoring anyway, so you would need to do that anyway, so this may get you there.
Yeah, I am very confident that we would not be impacting the wells, though. I mean, over the last 10 years, the school district has been operating their 2 wells and in some periods of time pumping continuously. We have seen no impacts on the stream. We have seen no impacts on the neighboring wells. We've seen, no impacts. Granted, it's 2 wells, right? It's not 4 wells.
Have you talked to, what about, I mean, I'm just throwing this out there. You know, we're trying to do the right thing and address the neighbors' concerns. What about talking to your neighbors and saying, hey, we're trying to complete this hydrological study. In order to do that, we need to do this. And what this is saying is we can't start until then. Are you guys amendable to, and the reason I say that, because if they provide letters of support and say, hey, we want to do the right thing and see this potentially, I don't know what your relationship with the neighbors are. I don't know if it's contentious, but it may give us a level of comfort that they're like, hey, okay, this is, you're doing, and again, or maybe they say no, I don't know.
I think we can craft a condition that would allow you to fill the tank as long as you're monitoring your neighbors' wells and their well levels don't decline lower than the Mendocino County guidelines say. And if you're confident that won't happen, then it's a win-win because the neighbors will then experience the big sucking straw and their wells won't run dry and maybe they'll not be as worried and neither will we be as worried and your tanks will be full and it will all be perfect.
Yeah.
So I think there's a way we can
That
craft a
seems
condition.
reasonable, yeah.
hallelujah. Well, is it okay to wait on resolution that for 2 weeks until we can consider all this iron
I
items?
don't feel I have really a choice. We're at your mercy. So,
I mean, I'm comfortable moving forward today and letting environmental health deal with this, but I'm also comfortable waiting 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'm kind of the mindset that I don't know how much additional information we're going to get from environmental health
yeah.
in 2 weeks that's going to help us craft a much more coherent plan than we have already. To me, it feels very thoughtful, and we've done a lot of this thinking and work
But
already.
I think that's because you and I were there and
Yeah,
those
right.
guys weren't.
That's true.
I just think that there's a potential to add a condition regarding monitoring program, and I don't have enough. I feel that environmental health could provide some information on that as to, how realistic it is, and it's not something that's uncommon. Again, we're looking at long-term impacts, not just immediate impacts, and I think environmental health could provide some And there's questions here on environmental health. I think that they should address them. I think that we should show that we did our due diligence. It's 2 weeks. I understand that it's 2 weeks, but it's 2 weeks.
And I do want to note too to the commission that all of the wells are set up with brand new flow meters and transducers to measure the groundwater levels. And the school's new communication telemetry system collects the data. So
But there's no
reporting. I think
exactly
the issue is the reporting.
so you're already halfway there. So
Yeah,
if
we're collecting it for our
yeah.
use for management of
Yeah.
the system. But if the county, finds it necessary to add a condition to
Yeah.
report, that
And
could be
you're
done.
set up to do that.
The school district already reports to the Division of Drinking Water annually. So if the county would like to obtain reports as well, we can.
Because, and that, their report's different than what we'd be looking for. They want to make sure that nobody's going to get sick from the water.
Yep.
And we want to make sure that, wells aren't going to go dry. And I do think that there could potentially be a way to craft that. And maybe there's not, but at least we know we did our due diligence to, see that through.
Yep. Yeah, our intent with the system was to be able to manage it sustainably. That's why we've set everything up the way we have.
But that's my opinion. Again, I'm only one person.
Well, I mean, we're trying to get all the opinions in here. Should we move ahead or should we continue? Commissioner Jones, do you have a strong opinion one way or the other?
I don't.
Okay. Commissioner Richards, do you have a strong opinion one way or the other?
I don't, but I have lost the thread a little bit on the shall versus may provide and the feasibility. I've lost the drift of the conversation on the whole thing.
Yeah, so I think that the city attorney didn't like can, but he was okay if we used shall and if feasible, as feasible. So it would be stored water shall be supplied by MUSD as feasible to property owners whose wells have run dry within the area defined as the, but again.
Deputy County Counsel, do you want to?
Oh, you disagree with me?
Just a clarification, I think can is while fluffy, is reasonable. And I do agree with the political issue of the district itself. I think that's something that what can was always meant to cover was, that is something these are their constituents. And it's the shall, that gives me pause for thought. Shall, if feasible, it softens that. To the extent there's any buy-in that we get, if we're doing this for another 2 weeks, we're talking with the district, we can see what their concerns might be, or if there's things they can add to that, then we can discuss that. But can was fine. That was the clarification point that I think the chair saw as well.
So we don't need to worry about any cost for delivering that water to the residents whose wells have been dry? And would it be the same as if they had pumped it themselves, the electrical, et cetera? Because there are a lot of people who don't have storage, and I don't know, it's difficult, very difficult.
There's
I don't know how in-depth you want to go on that.
I think the underlying issue here is that we don't have certainty that in a bad drought, this system won't impact the neighbors. And whether or not Matt thinks that it won't or not, it hasn't been conveyed to us in a way that we're convinced. And so all of this discussion around 15, 16, and 17 is around dealing with those issues.
Well, and we could potentially condition, even if, with a little more time to think about this and potentially by environmental health, maybe part of the condition is they need to provide those neighbors with a storage container. They don't have to be the huge ones, but something.
Right.
So, and with that said, that at least they can also start saving their own water now. They don't have to wait until there's a need, so that they have a backup plan there as well. And maybe this gives us a little more time to research what that, to me, is. I don't think that it's fair to the neighbors. We have no indication that while it sounds lovely, that they're going to be able to go ahead and implement that at the time of need. So maybe there's things that they can do ahead of time, and maybe there's not, but we don't know that yet. So even 2 weeks, I think, would provide a little more, and maybe we can punt that back on to you. Maybe now that that's a concern for us, maybe you guys can do a little bit of research and see what other businesses have done in situations such as this, or what other level of comfort could be provided. Or would they, or even if it's feasible for you guys to provide a water, you know, a little water tank that could, it's 2 weeks. You might be able to provide us a little more comfort in with that.
Sure. I mean, what I can say on that issue, first, the school district does not have the funds to be providing water tanks to residents in the area. The grant won't pay for it either, the 2 grants, because they're specifically for the school district's water system improvements, not providing tanks to neighbors. There was a program that was recently rolled out and completed earlier this summer, wherein the Community Services District obtained, gosh, I think it was well over 100 tanks, maybe more than that, that they got for free through a program, I believe it was through CAL FIRE, and those tanks were given out for free to members of the community. So there was a rollout of a lot of tanks. I witnessed them come and go from the treatment plant in Mendocino, and hopefully that helped with storage needs for some of these people.
Well, isn't fire, and they provide, the fire district provided a level of support for this. Maybe they have more stored away somewhere and they'd be willing to help provide. It's maybe worth a phone call. Again,
Yeah.
It would give us a level of certainty.
Sure.
Or a level of comfort that, you know, that there are some, because it's a great point. You know, these are landowners that could have owned this property for a long time. Maybe they don't have the means to pay for that incurred cost that they haven't had to experience in the past, because now they don't have water and electricity.
Yeah.
So I would suggest that we've kind of talked this into the ground, and I feel a little bit like we're going around in circles now.
Yeah.
And I think that Rob has heard our concerns and can maybe look at those 3 special conditions and talk with the district and environmental health and try and craft something that you think might resolve some of these issues. I don't know. Good luck. And then
But it feels like there's a general consensus that we're going to move to continue this.
yeah, I mean, we could also try and just take a vote with the special conditions as are and see if you have a quorum or a majority. If you want.
I'm feeling inclined, just hearing that there's not strong opinions in some directions and some strong opinions in others, that we continue this. And it sounds like, while it might slow things down slightly for Mendocino Unified, they're going to continue doing the work that has already been approved and has already been blessed by this august body. And then we'll come back in 2 weeks, and hopefully we have a little bit more information that can guide that. Do we need to make a motion for it to continue to a date certain? Okay. Also,
September 3rd, please.
September 3rd, yes. Also, this is outside of the normal timing and protocol, but I guess there is a comment, a hand raised in Zoom. Can we reopen for public comment at this point? Deputy County Counsel.
At the discretion of the commission.
Great. May we hear, yes, so whomever's on Zoom with your
Valerie.
hand. Valerie.
Good morning. This is Valerie Stanley, the tipple for the Sherwood Valley Tribe. I wanted to just comment on the comment that was made by one of the commissioners providing water tanks to the neighbors. We would be involved in the sense that, although that might be a good idea, how do you know those tanks aren't going to go on sites around the area? We've been involved with the school district. We were out there monitoring. So when you throw something like that out there, there's also that other piece that there may be sites. So simply placing a water tank, it has to be done a little bit slower. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I'll entertain a motion that we continue this item to a date certain of September 3rd, 2026.
I'll move that we continue UM 2025-004, Mendocino Unified School District, to September 3rd, 2026.
Do we have a
I'll
second? We have a
I'll
second?
second,
Thank
yes.
you, Commissioner Richards. All right, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Richards,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Chair Pollen.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Great. Wow, that was a long time for continuation. All right. Now, we got a lot of great stuff in the open there. All right. Does anyone need a restroom break or anything before we move on to the next item?
I don't need one.
Okay, great. Let's keep moving then.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Matt. We'll see you again. Yeah. Get a nice drive inland again. All right. We're moving on to item number 6B. This is case number GP_2026-0001. This is the County of Mendocino County. This is review and consider a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors on an amendment to Chapter 3.4, Hazards Management of the Mendocino County Local Coastal Program. The amendment consists of adoption of sea level rise baseline policies. I'm going to open the public hearing. Have there been any correspondence or telephone calls received?
All correspondence has been posted to the website.
Thank you very much. May we have a staff presentation, Liam?
Sure, thank you. Good morning. This is Liam with Planning and Building Services. So this project was originally being managed primarily by Julia Krog, and now that she's left, I'll be stepping in to help keep us moving forward along with Nash Gonzalez. So, give a little bit of background. Hopefully, I'll move a little closer here. In 2021, the California Coastal Commission's Local Government Working Group adopted this framework for a phased approach to updating local coastal programs for sea level rise. And in 2022, the county received a grant to update the local coastal program in relation to sea level rise, and that is the more comprehensive LCP update that Julia has kept you informed of over the years. And then in 2023, a Senate bill was passed that added this section to the Public Resources Code, which specifically requires that local governments update their LCPs to include certain policies and analysis related to sea level rise. And following that, in 2024, the county received a second grant related to the LCP to develop a sea level rise resiliency strategy, which I believe Julia has also been keeping you informed of over time. And one of the tasks within that grant is to update the LCP to include baseline sea level rise policies. And then in 2024, also the Coastal Commission updated their sea level rise policy guidance. So that task that has to do with the baseline LCP policies kind of outlines 4 different topic areas that were also recommended by the local government working group to be included. The first one of those is the use of best available science in these LCP policies and our analysis. And since sea level rise is sort of an continuously evolving science, the Coastal Commission is, pushing for this to be included, so to give sort of LCPs more flexibility as science evolves to use whatever the best available science is at the current time when evaluating projects and when creating policies. And their sort of definition of what best available science includes would be recent governmental publications. Like I said, the Coastal Commission recently updated their own sea level rise policy guidance in 2024. It could include peer-reviewed scientific journals, and then it could include other information from climate change and sea level rise focused organizations, such as the Coastal Commission or the Ocean Protection Council or the IPCC. And as I mentioned before, incorporating this into the LCP gives a little bit more flexibility so that you're not sort of, locked into past science or past analysis or documents that were adopted when things have evolved. The second topic has to do with risk disclosures and assumption of risks, and the inclusion of policies related to this would ensure that property owners understand hazards and that they can plan and make property investments with those hazards in mind. And then it would also serve to avoid spending public funds on private development disaster recovery and ensure that property owners are aware of the limits on shoreline armoring which are existing within the Coastal Act and the county's LCP. third topic is has to do with vulnerability assessments and adaptation plan development / updates. And really this kind of results in a county commitment to update the sea level rise resiliency strategy, which is currently in the process, and the LCP as new information is gathered. And then the last topic is has to do with phased updates, so that local government working group and subsequent publications from the Coastal Commission have concluded essentially that sort of more phased approaches to updating LCPs rather than, I guess, wholesale updates at longer time intervals are more appropriate, at least specifically for sea level rise. And so this results in this would lead to a county commitment to this phased approach to dynamically respond to new sea level rise science and conditions as we see them develop. So the actual proposed amendments to the LCP that are before you today include, and this is within the attachments to the memorandum that was included for this. So the first update is simply updating the references within that chapter of the LCP to the newly amended Coastal Act sections, and also to acknowledge sea level rise within the body text of the hazards issues section of that chapter. And then the first change to the actual policies would be to amend 3.4-1. And to summarize, that would be just to acknowledge the exacerbation of hazards due to sea level rise on erosion. Then to amend the section 3.4-7, which would require the factoring of sea level rise in bluff setbacks and geotechnical analyses. And this is actually something that's already done as part of our coastal development permit process. I would say all of the geotechnical investigations that I've seen that have come in for coastal development permits on for development on bluff top properties already factor in sea level rise into their analysis, and so this is just formalizing that practice essentially. Then to amend 3.4-12, and these are just some clarifications that the Coastal Commission had recommended to us to that section. Then to add section 3.4-14, and these would be sort of more generalized siting and design regulations for sea level rise related hazards, including sort of general statements about siting and designing development to minimize risks from hazards. Then the second one to add 3.4-15, which would sort of also formalize a practice that is quite common in our coastal development process currently, which is to require deed restriction risk disclosures and assumptions of risk for certain developments in those hazard areas. Next, to add 3.4-16, which is the county's commitment to 10-year sea level rise resiliency strategy and LCP updates as we obtain more information and as we see conditions change. Then to add 3.4-17, and this is more generalized statements about using the best available science, whether it be within these geotechnical investigations that might come in or within the development of future policies to the LCP and to the zoning code as well. And then lastly, to add 3.4-18, and this is a commitment for the county to comply with Senate Bill 272 and that new section of the Public Resources Code, which does require that by 2034, the county create this sea level rise plan, finish this sea level rise plan really, and to update the local coastal plan accordingly. And I think the majority of the requirements of SB 272 will have been completed by the time we finish the process of both this sea level rise resiliency strategy grant and the broader LCP update grant, but that's still proposed to be sure. Then just some other notes about the proposal in front of you. So the previous memo that went out stated that the county had sent notification to 24 local and regional tribes, and that we had received a response from the Sherwood Valley Band of Pomo Indians, and that they had not commented on the draft that we had sent to them. However, after that was published, I did have a phone call with the Historic Preservation Officer for the tribe, for the Sherwood Valley tribe, and we did discuss the project. And in this sort of second memorandum that was posted yesterday to this item, I just wanted to clarify kind of what we had discussed in that phone call and sort of where we landed. And essentially, I think we agreed to continue consultation with the tribe as these two grants that I mentioned before continue, and as we further develop policies. And I think we realized that the comments of the tribe would be better addressed as we come back and amend these sections later on as part of the broader LCP update. And some of those comments were, I think, more generalized, not just to hazards management, but to the county's LCP as a whole for some things that that tribe would like to see. So we're committed to continue to consult with the tribe and engage as we move through the process in the future. And so, yeah, that's that. And then the environmental determination. So the this section of the CEQA guidelines specifically states that these sorts of actions, the county's updating, any actions related to the county updating the local coastal program is exempt from CEQA. And just for a point of clarification, which I'll bring up on the screen in a little bit later, but we did realize there was an error in the resolution because it references a negative declaration that wasn't actually prepared. This is, in our view, something that's exempt from CEQA. And so we are recommending an adoption of a revised resolution that just clarifies that that this is determined to be exempt, rather than the preparation of it. And so I think I'll make sure I cover everything in my memo. Yeah, we did discuss a little bit with County Council, who advised us that actually the use of hyperlinks in the memo is problematic. And so in this revised memo, we did include some more traditional references to the documents that were hyperlinked in that memo. That's one note. And then in this revised memo, we did want to just clarify some of the points that are in the resolution about the project's consistency with the applicable Coastal Act and local coastal policies that are summarized in that resolution in the previous memo. So as I mentioned before, that new section of the Public Resources Code specifically requires that the county create a sea level rise plan. And there is another section of the Coastal Act, I think I have listed here. That's section 30270, which requires the Coastal Commission to take into account the effects of sea level rise in coastal resources planning and management policies. And so really this is a direct implementation of both the requirements of our grant that we obtained from the Coastal Commission and these sections of the Coastal Act. These draft policies were sent to the Coastal Commission, and they did have some comments. Those were incorporated into what you see before you today. And we are recommending adoption of the revised resolution that's attached to the second memo that was posted, which just makes the clarification to the CEQA exemption. So the next steps, if the Planning Commission decides to adopt that resolution today, would be to bring this to a Board of Supervisors hearing and for them to make a decision. And after that, that would grant us the authorization to submit this LCP amendment application to the Coastal Commission to adopt these baseline policies, and hope to eventually gain certification from the Coastal Commission. So, kind of separate from this particular project, I did just want to provide the Planning Commission with some updates about where we are with these other grants. So in July of 2025, this has to do with the Sea Level Rise Resiliency Grant specifically. In July of 2025, the final sea level rise existing conditions analysis was completed. And then in May 2026, the final sea level rise analysis and risk assessment was completed as well. Currently in progress are, we're in the process of setting up public workshops and stakeholder planning sessions in the community with our consultant. And along with that, the Sea Level Rise Resiliency Strategy initial draft has been sent to us by the consultant, and we're reviewing that internally right now, and we'll provide comments to them. And eventually that will be made available to the public as part of, kind of simultaneously while we're setting up those workshops and stakeholder meetings. And so kind of as all that is happening, we are also preparing updated initial draft language to the local coastal program in addition to these baseline policies that were recommended today. And those would be based on the prior reports that I just mentioned and input from the public at those workshops and the stakeholders at those planning sessions, in addition to this final sea level strategy document. And so that would include further updates to this chapter 3.4, the hazards management policies. It would also involve updates to the geotechnical evaluation requirements that we currently have in the zoning code. It would involve updates to our hazards maps and the applicable sections of the coastal zoning code that deal with hazards. And this particular task would actually be incorporated as part of the broader LCP update that is in a separate grant. So that would be brought forward towards the end of this year and on into next year. So the next steps for this grant are, like I was mentioning, for public and coastal commission input on the draft sea level rise resiliency strategy and the initial draft language of those sections of the LCP. And then eventually to finalize that sea level rise resiliency strategy and create final draft language to be incorporated into the broader LCP update to eventually be submitted to the Coastal Commission. And then secondarily, to give some updates on the broader LCP update grant, between December of 2025 and March of 2026, several of the sort of background analyses that the county had retained consultants to complete have been completed. So that includes the cultural resources analysis, groundwater conditions update, the highway traffic capacity analysis, and visual resources analysis. The biological resources report is the last of the sort of background studies that we hired consultants to complete. And that is currently in the process. The consultant, I believe, is currently in the process of addressing comments that we had received on that report from Fish and Wildlife and other. And then we're also in the process of doing our agricultural resources analysis and coastal access / visitor serving facilities analysis, and those are both to be done using our existing staff resources in the Planning and Building Department. And along with that, we'll be in the process in the coming months of drafting initial policy language and narratives for each of the elements that we prepared these background reports for, and for what we're doing with using our own staff resources. And that draft policy language will sort of, as it's developed, it will be sent to the Coastal Commission staff for them to review and to comment on. Eventually that will also be made available to the public, and sort of parallel to that process, we'll be in coordination with one of our other consultants to begin developing the environmental impact report under CEQA as for the larger local coastal program update. And and then again, parallel with all of that, as these draft policies become available to the public, we're planning to hold stakeholder engagement and public workshops meetings to go over that and gain input. I believe that's all I have for you. Again, as I mentioned before, our recommendation is that the Planning Commission adopt the revised resolution that's in second memorandum posted online. And with that, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Do we have questions from commissioners for staff?
Boy, what a heck of a lot of work you guys are doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just makes my head spin. And it's a lot to coordinate. It really is. And I looked through the ordinance, or the draft ordinance, and surprisingly found nothing to disagree with.
Whoa.
I know.
All right.
Shocking.
Any other questions from commissioners for staff? Okay.
No questions, but I shared Commissioner Jones's comments. I love these policies. I mean, I'm like, where were we before? You know, oh my God. Assumption of the risk, best science. Is best science new? Using best science? That policy as opposed to what previously? I'm just curious. There was like no flexibility and there was no policy. Oh, I
Yeah,
see. Well, I love best available science.
Okay.
And as from an attorney's point of view, the disclosures and assumption of the risk really make me happy too. So, so thank you. Great job.
Planner Nash, you want to something to add?
Well, I think I'm just going to piggyback off of what Commissioner Jones mentioned, that there's really nothing here that she disagrees with. This is something that's been going on now for several months, where we've been working with the Coastal Commission and trying to vet out this language so that by the time it got to you folks and by the time it goes to the Board of Supervisors, it's been vetted out with the Coastal Commission. And so as Liam has indicated, a lot of what is now to happen, and I think he kind of mentioned it in his presentation, but not directly, but you folks are going to be busy over the next few months because we are going to be bringing a lot of this language to you for review. I was involved with the general plan in 2009, and we kept our Planning Commission very, very busy for several months because this is where the policy language starts coming in, and the engagement is going to be happening with the public, and then vetting that information, putting it together, putting it into the documents, and then bringing it to you folks for review and recommendation onto the board. And then ongoing meetings with the Coastal Commission, who's one of our biggest stakeholders, because not only do they have the power to survey, but they are also providing the grant to the county. And so I think there's a lot going on with sea level rise right now that and it is something that's going to change over time. And this is one of the reasons why they had that requirement in there that, you know, we come back and reevaluate, because best sciences are changing constantly. What was in their technical memorandum a couple of years ago is now completely changed. So it is something that's going to change. And in fact, Liam and I were talking about this morning, and we'll see if this turns out to be a very wet year, that we might see some changes in sea level rise again as far as the science and the policies go. But in essence, this is where we're at right now, is where we're going to be bringing what we call these digestible chunks to the Planning Commission. And this is just one of many. And as Liam pointed out, we've already had quite a few of the studies performed. And several weeks ago, you had presentations from some of these consultants on traffic, on cultural resources, and so on. And the only one that we still have yet to wrap up is the biological assessment. And that one is still going through the process right now, where we're looking at drafts, and we're waiting for comments from the other stakeholders on it. But more to come.
Thank you. All right, I will now invite public comment on this item. We'll start with people here in the room and then we'll move on to telecommenters. If you're called to speak, please state your name for the record. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person. Speakers are asked to please address their comments to the meeting chair and to refrain from using profanity or engaging in conversation with members of the audience or staff. Do we have anyone in the room that would like to speak? Do we have anyone on Zoom?
First, you have Peter McNamee.
All right, Peter.
Thank you. Again, I'm Peter McNamee. I facilitate a work group called the Mendocino County Vision Work Group, and we became involved in this process back in 2021 when it was first initiated, and we formed as a work group, and over the intervening years, we've had dozens and dozens of meetings and webinars discussing the impact of sea level rise and climate change on the LCP update. And so it's very exciting to start to see a light at the end of the tunnel relative to updating the county's LCP. I want to say first and foremost that we support the proposal that you have before us, but we do have some comments that we would like to bring to your attention in that regard. The first one's super minor, but in looking at the resolution, at least the one that I downloaded yesterday and printed out, it appeared that there was a transposing of the lettering in the reference to Coastal Commission's local government working group in the resolution itself. In one place, it says LGWG stands for that. In another place, it says LWGW stands for that. So I know it's super minor, but I just wanted to bring it to your attention so that if that was still the case in the resolution before you today, it could be noted and corrected so there's no confusion going forward in regard to the resolution. The second issue I wanted to bring to your attention is a little bit more substantial, and that has to do particularly in section 3.4-13, where you sort of provide a definition of, and in particular, I should say 3.4-14, you provide a definition of what constitutes the parameters of sea level rise and in terms of its hazardous impacts, and you talk about erosion and long-term shoreline retreat and flooding, inundation, storm waves, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I just want to call to your attention that the Coastal Commission itself, in its guidelines for addressing sea level rise, also includes, and what I don't see in this document, is the recognition that sea level rise brings about with its saltwater intrusion. And given your discussion earlier this morning about the implications and the importance of groundwater, I would think that you would want to include in your definition of what the sea level impacts are that saltwater inclusion is part of that. I have provided written comments with substantially more recommendations, but these are augmentations to and can be dealt with to this ordinance at a later date. But I did want to put them on the record, and I thank you for giving me the time to bring these issues to your attention.
Thank you very much, Peter. All right, do we have any other members of the public?
Next, you have Mary Rose.
Mary Rose, you're up.
Thank you for allowing me to speak, and I want to commend you for moving forward on this issue. One thing I want to raise is, I've been working with a lot of groups internationally and locally on impacts of climate change and sea level rise on populations. And one of the things I want the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors eventually to know, consider how sea level rise interacts with other hazards. Peter mentioned one, and rather than addressing each risk separately, and not just geological, sea level rise provides only a baseline for a surge to build on. We saw this with Hurricane Sandy, We can name a lot of other horrible storms, be it king tides, high tides, extreme storms, atmospheric rivers, or a combination of all these will impact coastal and inland rivers, estuaries, and bays. The issue is the problem, and I come from, New Jersey, where in my hometown, the Raritan River, which is not near an ocean, but feeds into Raritan Bay, with Hurricane Sandy and sea level rise, a whole area of houses were wiped out. And what the government did with FEMA, et cetera, was buy out the local properties. No homes are allowed to be ever developed there again. So this is we're doing adaptation, not resilience. We're doing mitigation we're beyond that right now. So we can't wait until a house is it destroyed or RV park. There are sea level rise policy guidance, which identifies acquisition of ocean properties, incentives to relocate existing development out of hazardous areas. And, we could do a voluntary relocation acquisition program. FEMA has done that, and there's other grants available, this is voluntary. You don't force people out. But if, we can't wait till homes are destroyed, or RV parks and people in motorhome parks, they're mostly at risk. So this Mendocino County program should be designed around particular funding sources to purchase property in areas at high risk of serious damage, and where feasible, assist in relocating homes and businesses to safer locations. And you remember back in the day when Napa River flooded, they did the same thing. My Native American colleague, Charlie Toledo, was working on that area in Napa when the Napa River, they had to relocate homes. So this is not just about sea level rise. It's a combination of all factors. It's not just geological. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary Rose. Do we have other members wishing to speak?
Next will be Dave.
Dave, Spark, you're up.
Thank you very much, Chair Pollen. For the record, my name's Dave Schbach.
Oh, sorry, I was reading it in tiny
It's all
font.
right. There's a vowel deficiency, but it's congenital. I can't fix it. I represent, I live on the Wallala Ridge. I also serve as the secretary in the Wallala Municipal Advisory Council. I'm going to offer comments as an individual, but also I've been appointed by my colleagues as the liaison to the LCP update. So I feel I have some ability to speak there as well. I want to begin by offering my compliments to staff for a job very well done on the staff report, and also to staff for taking the time to deal with what is essentially a legislative mandate with a bunch of boilerplate, to do their best to key this into the Mendocino County framework, LCP framework. I think you've done a fine job, and I want to repeat Commissioner Jones' comment that I too shared, that I don't have any concerns or disagreement with the proposal. Thank you very much for this. This is important work. I do, however, want to draw your attention to the GMAC remit when it was created decades ago, was to help the county interact with the community of the South Coast, with particular reference to the LCP update that Mr. Nash described back in 2009 as a lot of work with a lot of public interaction, and perhaps one of the Achilles heel back then was too much public interaction, or at least a process that got away from the county and thus protracted the time frame to get the work done. And I appreciate protraction in public interactions, and really commit to you that we're all interested in an efficient process. However, I want to observe that this is a case of a missed opportunity, where a very well thought out, kind of prepackaged set of policy adjustments and ordinance adjustments that are necessary, that are mandated by the state, and thus advanced ahead of other work, because that's the sensible way to do the job. This would have been a great opportunity to engage through reference, formal reference, referral to GMAC in advance of your consideration today to get some input from the South Coast. That sadly is not before you today. I'm not suggesting that you stop and do it, but observe that this is a learning moment and that hopefully as the LCP update proceeds and all the vetting out, as Mr. Gonzalez says, is happening, that staff looks for opportunities to vet out with the benefit of community input, particularly from groups such as GMAC, whose job it is to help you all tap into the local community, educate the local community on what's coming. There's a lot on the table and a lot in motion, but also to have the benefit of that input in a larger venue. Thank you for hearing my comments, and again, compliments to you all for your service.
Thank you, Dave. Do we have more?
There are no other hands raised in Zoom.
All right. Anyone in the room wishing to speak on this one? Nashi, when you speak, or you just come on down?
Just a comment. Nash
Please.
Gonzalez, interim chief planner. To Dave's comments, we're just beginning the process, so we will be having stakeholder meetings on the South Coast, Central Coast, and on the North Coast as well. So again, this is just one component. This is what's being driven by the Coastal Commission, but then as we finalize all the studies and start beginning to debut a lot of this information before it becomes finalized, before it comes to you as as draft policies, we will be going out to all the stakeholders.
Great.
So we're just at the beginning right now with, as Liam pointed out, that's the next step, is to begin the public outreach process. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, if I'm not hearing anyone, no one jumped on, I'm going to close the public comment section, and then I'm going to ask staff if you have any final remarks.
Yeah, thank you. This is Liam. Just one thing I just wanted to share. The amended resolution, and just note some changes that could be made just to address Mr. McNamee's comments about the wording. So this is the revised resolution. So if the this, I don't know if you can see my cursor, this fourth whereas paragraph says LWGW, it should say LGWG. And that's in the next paragraph as well, where it says LWGW, it should say LGWG. Everything else I think should be okay. And then, nope, this is actually not the revised resolution. This is the revised. As I mentioned before, the changes we're also recommending to this first bullet point here regarding the exemption. So yeah, I would recommend just making those minor changes to the wording as I mentioned before with this revised resolution, but that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments from any commissioners?
I guess I'll just make an observation. One of the reasons I like this ordinance is it's kind of like a do your research, be aware, sign an agreement that you understand, and then do a deed recordation. It doesn't say you can't do anything. And I think that's really important, especially for our harbors, because in some cases, harbor work needs to happen where sea level rise is going to impact it. And as long as you're aware of the issues, I think that's the main thing. Other than that, I don't have any comments, and I'd be happy to make the recommendation.
And would you make the recommendation to move it as amended as suggested by
Mr.
Planner
Liam?
Crowley?
Of course.
Great. Well, do we have that motion?
Yeah, I'd like to move that we adopt the resolution as recommended and amended by Liam today.
Okay. Are we adopting this resolution, or we're recommending to the Board of Supervisors that they...
We're adopting a resolution recommending.
Okay, thank you. Okay, great. All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Richards?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes.
Chair Pollin?
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Fantastic. I see we have nothing from staff today. And do we have anything from any commissioners? All right. With that, then I'll invite a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
I'll second.
Commissioner Johnson?
I did it again. I removed it. I got ahead of myself.
You're good.
Oh, here we go. It's auto-connecting. Give me a second. Yes.
Commissioner Richards?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes.
Chair Pollin?
Yes.
We are adjourned.
Yay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Liam.
2 weeks.
Poor guy, that's a lot of work. I'm sure on top of everything else you normally do, right? That's good.
Sometimes I find it's
You're
best-
welcome, Commissioner.
What is that?
Water
All the
issues.
cats in the
Oh, yeah.
straight line.
I'm very traditional about that. I want to balance, but I get my back up on it.
Long time no see.
Yeah, no, I get it. I don't know. I'm just learning because I don't, I mean, I guess I did have a well once when we lived in Potter, but,